Hello, friends. Happy Easter. Let's get started with a song.
Greatest day in history. Death is beaten, you have rescued me. Sing it out, Jesus is alive. Empty cross, the empty grave. Life eternal, you have won the day. Shout it out, Jesus is alive. He's alive. And oh, happy day, you washed my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Forever I'm changed. Greatest day in history. Death is beaten, you have rescued me. Sing it out, Jesus is alive. Empty cross, the empty grave. Life eternal, you have won the day. Shout it out, Jesus is alive. He's alive. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Oh no, forever I'm changed. And what a glorious day, what a glorious way that you have saved me. And what a glorious day, what a glorious name, Jesus. Oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Oh, happy, forever I'm changed. I am changed, I am changed.
I'm so glad you're here to celebrate today. And we are going to celebrate Jesus. In fact, that's our Bible point. We celebrate Jesus. And every time you hear that, you're going to say, Hooray, Jesus. Let's try that. We celebrate Jesus. Hooray, Jesus. Our Bible buddy is Olivia, a barn owl. And did you know that barn owls are present in almost all the world? But I have a question for you. There's only one continent where you won't find a barn owl, and is that Asia or Antarctica? Let's watch the video to find out.
Hello, I'm Olivia, and I'm a barn owl. You can find barn owls in almost every part of the world. In fact, we live on every continent except Antarctica. Some of us live in the desert. Others prefer the big city life. Some of my barn owl relatives built their nests in baseball stadiums where they're safe. Get it? They're safe. Personally, I prefer to live in the forest. I like to make my nest in a cave. Caves are nice and cool. They're good places to hide out and rest during the day. We barn owls look for food at night. God gave us good eyesight, even in the dark. But if you're outside at night, you probably won't hear us fly by. Our soft feathers help us zoom silently through the sky. Thanks to God's brilliant creating, we barn owls see well, hear well, and fly quietly. So finding a midnight snack is a breeze. Yum! I know that the dark can be a little spooky or scary for you humans. I get it. And even during the day, sad times can make your hearts feel a little gloomy and dark. When you feel that way, look at my picture. Maybe my heart-shaped face will remind you of God's love, even in dark times. In the Bible book of John, chapter 3, verse 16, it says, "For this is how God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son." That's Jesus! In the Bible, Jesus' friends went through a very dark time. Jesus had died. For 3 days, he wasn't with them anymore. They couldn't see him, hear his voice, be near him. But then, just as he promised, Jesus came back to life. His friends went to the cave where they'd put his body, and it wasn't there. Jesus was alive. The dark time was over, and there was reason to celebrate. Jesus had beat sin when he died on the cross, and he beat death when he came back to life. God's love won! And I have good news for you humans. Jesus wants to be your friend forever. Jesus, friend who loves you so much he'd give up his life for you. Jesus, a friend who forgives you when you aren't such a good friend. There is nothing you can do to make Jesus stop loving you. You can't see Jesus with you because he's not a human anymore, but you can pray and talk with him anytime. He always hears you. Here's the best part. When you're friends with Jesus, someday you will get to see him in heaven, face to face. Jesus wants to be your friend now and forever. Now that's something to celebrate. We celebrate Jesus! Hooray, Jesus!
Our Bible verse is from John 3:16, which is from God's love book to us. Let's say the verse together. Are you ready? For God so loved the world that he sent his one and only Son. Let's try that one more time. Are you ready? John 3:16. For God so loved the world, he sent his one and only Son. God loved us, you and me, so much that he didn't want us to be separated from him. And so he sent his Son, the Lord Jesus, down to earth to do something for us that only he could do. We're going to hear a lesson in just a few minutes, but before we do, let's sing another song.
There's power, there's wonder working power. There's power, there's wonder working power. There is power, wonder working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder working power in the precious
Hey guys, happy Easter. Do you know what you're supposed to say on Easter? If I say he is risen, what do you say? You say he's risen indeed. So let's try it. Happy Easter. He is risen indeed. It's awesome. You know, Easter, especially this year, I think Easter is probably the most important holiday. You know, Christmas is awesome. We celebrate Jesus' birth. But Easter, man, especially this year, and here's why. Think about where we were last year at Easter. We didn't even really get to celebrate Easter much together anyway. COVID has just been horrible this whole year. Maybe you've known people who have died, but school's been messed up. Everything's been messed up, right? And sometimes we can get discouraged and down about that. But what Easter tells us is that there's hope. Why? Because Jesus conquered death. And because he conquered death, he conquered everything. And so we can always put our hope in Jesus. And we can celebrate Jesus. And when we celebrate Jesus, we say, woohoo, way to go, Jesus. Because Jesus conquered death. But I want us to think about Good Friday. And it's funny that we call it Good Friday, because before Easter there's Good Friday. And Good Friday was one of the worst days ever for any time in history. Why? Because Jesus, who had lived a perfect life, he didn't have any sin in him. But the religious leaders hated him and they wanted to kill him. And they convinced Pilate to allow them to crucify him. But before they crucified him, they beat him. They put a crown of thorns on his head, and he was bleeding from his head. They used a whip on his back, and they hit him 49 times. They didn't hit him 50 times because they thought it might kill him. And then they made him take the cross, and they carried it to Golgotha. And on Good Friday, we remember Jesus' death. He died for your sins and for my sins. And do you know what? We're all sinful people. But Jesus' death paid for all of those sins so that we can have a right relationship with God. But you know, I want to read to you what happened when Jesus died. With a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And then the centurion, who was standing there in front of Jesus, saw how he died. And he said, surely this man was the Son of God. Yes, on Good Friday, man killed God. And it was the worst day ever. I want you to think about what the disciples were feeling like at that time. They had been following Jesus, and now they believed in Jesus, and now Jesus was dead. Can you imagine what they were feeling like? They were probably feeling angry. They were probably feeling hopeless. And here's the thing we want to remember. Whenever we're feeling hopeless, we want to remember Easter. Because what happened to Jesus? They took his body, and Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea took his body and they wrapped it. They put spices on his body, and then they took it to a tomb and they buried him in the tomb. Can you see the picture behind me? What did they do when they buried him in the tomb? They took a gigantic rock and they rolled it in front of him. And they posted a centurion, a massive Roman soldier, outside of that tomb so no one would steal his body. Can you imagine how hopeless they felt at that time, the disciples and the people who loved Jesus? They must have thought everything was over. And this is what I want you to remember. Whenever in your life, when you think life is over, or when it's very dark in front of you, Remember how the disciples felt right now. And remember what happened 3 days later. Because 3 days later, 2 Marys and a lady named Salome, not Salami, Salome, they went to the tomb. And this is what it says. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb. And they asked each other, "Who's going to roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. And as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in white, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where you laid him." The place where they had laid him was empty, and all that was left was the empty grave clothes. Jesus had risen. You see, Jesus conquered death. And because of that, we have no fear of the future, no matter what happens. As long as we believe in Jesus Christ, we can be with him because he has conquered death, and we can live forever with him. He is risen. He is risen indeed. The message of Easter is hope. The message of Easter is love. What does our Bible verse say? For this is how God showed his love for the world, that he gave his one and only Son. That Son was Jesus Christ, who died for you. But the big deal is that he rose from the dead. That's why we celebrate Jesus. Woohoo! Way to go, Jesus. Happy Easter, friends. And remember, because of Jesus Christ, we always have hope.
Welcome back. We celebrate Jesus. Hooray, Jesus! Nothing could stop Jesus' love for you, not even death. Jesus and his love for you is the one good thing that never comes to an end. We celebrate Jesus. Hooray, Jesus! Right now, I want you to close your eyes and picture yourself outside the tomb. I'm going to read something to you, and as I read it, I want you to pretend that you were there the day they discovered Jesus' tomb was empty. It's sad but true. Friends come and go. Even your best friend may move away or start going to a different school. Or maybe your friend on the soccer team decides to play baseball instead, and you never see one another again. And sometimes friends just change their minds about staying friends. They have a fight, or they get bored with each other, or they no longer share the same interests. When you lose a friend for any reason, it's easy to wonder if any friendship can really last. The good news, though, is that you've got a friendship that not only lasts, but it is forever. Jesus is a forever friend. He loves you today, and he will love you tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after, and after. You get the idea. There's nothing that you can say that changes how Jesus feels about you. He's always ready to listen to you, to hang out with you, to help you live in a way that pleases God. The only question is this: do you want Jesus as your friend? Let him know that you do. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.